Welcome to the WINN Weekender. I'm Andre Huey. I'm in Montego Bay, Jamaica at the Montego Bay Convention Center for the IMF High-Level Caribbean Forum. And this week on the Weekender, we'll be focusing on that forum, discussing unlocking economic growth in the Caribbean. Now, various discussions have taken place here, most of them closed door, but we'll give you some of the highlights of what we can provide. The first day, the opening day, we heard speeches from the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Portia Simpson-Miller. We've also heard from the Minister of Finance, Dr. Peter Phillips, as well as representatives from the Caribbean Development Bank, the IMF, and the World Bank. And so we'll give you presentations from the opening ceremony. We'll also give you highlights of an interview we had with Ms. Judith Gold, the St. Kitts Nevis Chief Representative for the IMF, speaking on a number of issues pertaining to St. Kitts Nevis. All that this week here on the WINN Weekender.
Given high costs of energy, people have less money to spend, and locally produced goods and services suffer. Because of the impact of the price of energy, my government has been paying a great deal of attention to the matter in a number of areas. I will mention very briefly the three most prominent areas. One area, which has been pursued in the past without success, is to replace our aging and inefficient power generating units with more modern, efficient ones using a cheaper alternative to oil. Jamaica's electricity has been based on oil for most of the history of the sector in Jamaica. However, our efforts have been affected by inability to secure alternative fuels at competitive prices.
The IMF is very much committed to the region and committed to the members to support their growth agendas and job agendas, as we said last year at the same Caribbean conference as well. In the past 3 years, we started our first Caribbean conference, talk about the macro stabilities. We heard from you, you talk about the most important things, job and growth. We quickly moved to the job and growth, which is the second thing of the conference. And after that conference, it's become ever clear, everybody said we need more specific issues to unlock the potential of the growth. So that's the reason we come to the three particularly important issues for this year.
When coupled with the high debt that many of our countries are experiencing, the impact manifests itself in low or no economic growth. Some of our countries have either entered programs with the International Monetary Fund or are working with the fund and multilaterals to lessen the impact. And we in Jamaica certainly appreciate the assistance provided by the international financial institutions thus far. However, it is important for me to reiterate and for you to appreciate the challenging conditions that Caribbean nations in particular still encounter. Fiscal consolidation is a major plank of all the programs, but fiscal consolidation limits the ability of governments to support growth. We are therefore delighted that this forum is being held in Jamaica, and especially pleased about the theme, unlocking economic growth.
I would like to take this opportunity to commend the IMF not only on hosting this conference here in Jamaica, but also for the agenda that they have crafted for discussion. I think it is not only on point, but it is also very timely. Those of you who have been tracking my activities recently would know that I speak almost ad nauseum about the issue of energy and the need to address it as a fundamental root cause of our uncompetitiveness here in the Caribbean. The problem is tractable and it needs to be addressed, and we need to move on it with a sense of great urgency. I have made the point elsewhere that the Caribbean is not energy poor. We might not have an abundance of fossil fuels all across our region, but we have enough alternatives to be able to make a reasonable dent into the cost of our import bill. Prime Minister Simpson-Miller made reference to the possibilities in that regard already.
It is often forgotten that before the last global financial crisis hit, people in the Caribbean benefited from the region's steady economic progress, improving health, education, and standards of living. The Caribbean region's GDP per capita increased sixfold in the last 3 decades, and poverty has been reduced. For instance, in Jamaica, poverty rates dropped almost 20% in 2 decades. However, the global financial crisis exposed the fragility of the Caribbean region when it hit in 2008, and Caribbean nations experienced declining or negative growth, and as a result, unemployment increased. This, together with weak safety nets, reversed some of the hard-won social gains as poverty levels increased, reaching almost 40% of the population. Lack of fiscal space meant that governments were not able to cushion these declines with countercyclical stimulus, and when they did so at the cost of further worsening primary balances.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is WINN FM.
WINN FM's mission is to contribute meaningfully to the information, awareness, and the development of our nation and the region through the building of educated and informed communities. WINN FM faces the issues squarely, without shying away from controversy, while striving continuously to provide balanced, responsible reporting.
Better music, better talk, better radio. 98.9 WINN FM.
Welcome back to the WINN Weekender. I'm here in Montego Bay, Jamaica, here at the Half Moon Bay Resort, where I'll have the opportunity to speak with Ms. Judith Gold. She's the head of the IMF Chief of Missions to St. Kitts and Nevis. We'll talk about a number of economic issues affecting St. Kitts and Nevis, including Petrocaribe and value-added tax. So I'll have the opportunity to interview her right here at the Half Moon Bay Resort. She's here in Montego Bay, of course, for the IMF High-Level Caribbean Forum being held at the Montego Bay Convention Center, just a few chains away from here at Half Moon Bay Hotel. So let's go into that interview with Ms. Gold. Can the government afford to reduce value-added tax, or at least remove it from food items, basic food items, or food items in general?
So our message to the government is that they should ensure fiscal sustainability with minimum reliance on the CBI inflows to prevent the situation where they become overly dependent on these inflows, and that they should use these inflows judiciously to improve training, infrastructure, and investment as needed. And in that context, it means that they should sustain the tax reform effort, that they should ensure and improve the administration, not to use it, not to substitute CBI earnings for taxes, because that's how you get in trouble. In that context, that they should contain government spending as well. That they, again, that's going back that they should not have a party, that they should be very careful and judicious. So they go evenly and steadily up without like having to, rather than up and then a crash, like keep going up ad infinitum. So in that context, the bad news is I don't think that they should give a tax holiday or reduce the VAT. Not at this point. It could be that in 2, 3, or 4 years they'd be in a position where they could re-examine the tax system and the whole fiscal situation and realize that they can afford a lower tax rate for a number of different reasons. But on the whole, we would like them to maintain a sustainable medium-term fiscal framework and to save much of the CBI resources. So for example, here's a model that if they would save the CBI resources and their significant amount and they can invest them like in a sovereign wealth fund, that the interest earnings of those from that could then support either higher investment or a lower tax rate. But that's sustainable because you have the money in a pot, you're earning income, and on average you can then count on this not every single year, because investment goes up and the return can go up, be volatile somewhat, but you could count that on the long term. So that's one example where the CBI can relax the budget constraint.
I also had the unique pleasure of speaking with the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Dwight Venner, about the matters pertaining to the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, economic growth, financial systems, and of course the controversial letter that raised concerns or raised issues regarding to the management of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. He responded to that and denied the allegations made in that letter. We'll give you a portion of that interview here right now, so we'll present that for you. At a later date, we'll have the full interview on winfm.com.
Well, that's completely erroneous letter. If you check it through, almost everything in that letter is inaccurate. Okay. For example, it says that the place is run down. Now, you've been to the ECCB. The building is 20 years old. It looks like it's been built yesterday. So it's something that every now and again somebody, I don't know, but we have very strong government structures there. From the board, we have a very strong audit committee. We have first-class auditors, First Price Waterhouse and KPMG, who've given us a very clean bill of health. We have safeguards assessment, the IMF. The IMF does a safeguards assessment on institutions which, in countries, they have fund programs. The fund has to ensure that the resources are safe. So on every count, we are an institution which is very well run, if I may say so. And all the things that you've seen there, I don't think merit. And in addition to that, it's an unsigned letter. If every manager in this region had to react to unsigned letters, then how could people manage things? We're afraid, especially in these days of social media and you guys, you would not be able to manage it because anybody can get up and write a letter and not sign it and say, well, this place is being well run, everybody runs with it. And it's completely unfair because the people who are accusing you are not showing their faces. And so how do you give credibility to something like that?
In the event, though, that employee may be disgruntled for whatever reason, is there a process that person? Of course
there's a process. The person can talk to the management, the personnel division, the division chief, the department head. If they wanted to go further, they could speak to the director from the country, the political representative from the country. There are N ways, that you can get away. I'm surprised that many people in the media, gave it such concern, including your own radio station. You don't do those things because, number one, I consider this to be what I call a public mischief. Because if you have a grievance, you don't go at the institution like that. It makes no sense. And secondly, you don't say things that are so obviously untrue that can even be libelous. So in places as small as these, people know how the ECCB is run. It's a very disciplined place. For example, when people talk about, for example, stress, we work in a stressful environment. We intervene banks. Okay? We have to protect the currency. This is not a place where you can make mistakes. Okay? In our banking division, for example, everything is automated so that somebody who is not vigilant enough or disciplined enough can have 2 extra noughts to something. Right? And that's $200 million gone off. Okay? You have to be disciplined in a place like that. It's also a very high security area. You can't get in there that people patrol the place because we have so much funds in the place. So it has to be a disciplined organization, and we demand discipline from people. You have to come to work early in the ECCB. You just can't walk in when you want. So if people can take the stress, well, then the decent thing to do is to say, well, it's not the environment which I can work.
This has been the WINN Weekender, coming to you this week from the Montego Bay Convention Center in Montego Bay, Jamaica, at the International Monetary Fund High-Level Caribbean Forum, discussing unlocking economic growth. Thank you for watching, and do stay tuned to WINN FM and WINN TV on winnfm.com. I'm Andre Huey. Thank you for watching.